Hi there, Osler. My name is Ellen, and I will be correcting these essays for you today. Very happy to see that you've begun the course and that you've begun writing your essays for the course. So let's take a look and see what you wrote here. The first essay you've submitted is about schools and whether they should be more entertaining. So let's see what you wrote. Some people have a reductionist way to approach formal education, and they prefer old-fashioned ED institutes where teachers give lessons to passive students, and the no, and where the only purpose for a school is to educate young students. However, I believe schools and in general educational centers should be enjoyable places where students may acknowledge that they can learn at the same time they are having fun. This essay will analyze both issues and use examples from some European countries to experience no, from European countries' experience to demonstrate points and prove arguments. Okay, fine. All right, so the first thing that I want to address here is that on the whole, this is fine. But I don't understand why you separated your introduction into 3 separate paragraphs. This really should just be one block of text, okay? And this is pretty important. It's important that it is one block of text. Paragraphing in general is very important to task 2. So it is in your best interest to do well with it and to be accurate with your paragraphing. Otherwise, it will affect your coherence and cohesion score. Um, Okay, let's see. Now, my next question to you is this. Now, just keep in mind it's really helpful if you can actually include the prompt in your answer. Just, copy and paste it. That's fine. But include it because I do like to refer to it. Now, if I'm not mistaken, this didn't ask you to discuss both views. It asks you just to discuss one view, or if you have kind of a mixed view, you can do that, but you're not forced to talk about both views. That is, it's not asking you the advantages and disadvantages and give your opinion. Okay, so for that reason, and I have to ask you, why are you going to discuss both views? You've told us that you believe schools should be enjoyable. Okay, so we know what your position is on this. You are in favor of these entertaining schools. So then the question is, why are you then going to discuss both issues? Okay, now, just so that I'm clear, you can do this. You can discuss both issues. However, it's really important that you make it clear in your introduction why you are going to do that. Do you see some merit? Do you see some value to the opposite point of view? And that's why you're going to talk about it. If that's the case, then you do have to introduce this in your introduction. There are ways to do it. We can talk about it later, okay? So, just a couple of those, just those things essentially in your introduction, and now I want to move on. Firstly, institutes that are more enjoyable are also more attractive to young students. This is because pupils learn new concepts and acquire knowledge in a better way when they are enjoying it. Okay, so this doesn't belong here. That is why in countries like Finland, many professors are implementing new ways to teach, focusing on making it an enjoyable experience just to reduce, no, not just to reduce absenteeism, but also using flexible models of teaching to develop creativity and problem solving in students. All right, so there were a couple of little awkward areas there, but other than that, fine. Secondly, enjoying learning could be one of the most important skills developed during childhood. This is due to the fact that in many schools, they try to make learning a more attractive activity, so consequently, pupils realize that acquiring knowledge should not be boring or dull and could be fun. We don't use contractions in task 2. Take, for example, no, get rid of the take here. For example, a recent study from a well-known university in Italy, the Bocconi Milano University, shows that more enjoyable schools, including colleges and universities, help to help to increase average grades for the students by 10%. Comparing more enjoyable schools help to increase, there we go, average grades for their students by 10%, comparing with educational institutions that were considered ED far less agreeable. Okay, fine. We'll talk about it in a minute. To conclude from the examples and arguments given, I firmly agree that schools must be enjoyable. In the future, it is predicted that the trend for most, I don't know why you're saying Eastern countries here, that's unclear, will be that educational institutions will balance their educational model and incorporate more enjoyable activities as well as rigid education assignments. Okay, so Osler, it's good for your first essay, okay? But there are some things that we absolutely have to talk about here, okay? So the first thing is I spent a lot of time talking about your introduction, um, and how important it is for the introduction to essentially be a blueprint. It's supposed to be a map for the way the rest of your essay is supposed to develop. You told us in your introduction that this essay was going to um, analyze both issues. Uh, Let me see. So, just so that I'm clear, what were both issues that you were going to talk about? That they should be more enjoyable and that they can learn at the same time they're having fun? Or, because this is now very unclear to me, or was it both issues this, like the formal kind of academic education and it, on the other hand, um, more enjoyable education. So that's really confusing to me because that's what I thought you were going to talk about. When you said you were going to discuss both issues, I thought you were going to talk about these opposing kind of viewpoints. Okay. And that's not what you talked about. So now I'm, pretty confused. Um, yeah, because you said here both issues, and now like I said, I thought you were going to talk about this versus this, but now I'm wondering, having read your essay, whether you were kind of taking these to be two issues, but they're not. They're just one issue. So I'm really rather confused here. Um, if this is what you meant, that you were going to talk about these two opposing sides, you didn't actually do that. You didn't do that at all. You it was one-sided. I mean, you're talking about why these type of enjoyable schools are more attractive to students, okay? That they have less absenteeism. And then you're also saying that these kids perform better and they learn that schools can be fun. So there's a bit of a disconnect here, but you need to understand that your introduction needs to be essentially a map. It's supposed to kind of show the way for the rest of the essay, and it has to be in line with what you actually develop in your body paragraphs. Okay, so there's a problem here. I'm a little confused as far as that's concerned. Okay, so that's one thing. Then I want to talk about vocabulary a little bit. I understand that you were trying to find, an alternative for the word entertaining. You didn't use it anywhere in the essay. I think maybe once, maybe. I don't even think I saw it once. But what ended up happening is that you kept overusing the word enjoyable. I counted, I think, about 6 times where you used it. Um, and, too much of a good thing is still too much. So you could have used other words instead of enjoyable. First of all, you could have used entertaining a couple of times. It wouldn't have been the end of the world. You also could have used amusing. You also could have used lighthearted, joyous, joyful. I mean, maybe not joyous. That's a little too much. But there were other words you could have used here, okay? And I would have liked that because it does feel like the vocabulary is a little inflexible, and that's not going to do you many favors when it comes to your lexical resource score. Okay. However, on the whole, the overall sense of this essay is good for your first attempt. Okay. But I do really want you to watch out for the things that we talked about. Um, you know, the thing about your introduction, the the appearance of the introduction, as well as what you actually say in it. It is important that it kind of leads the reader to understand what your essay is going to talk about. Okay, let's move on. It's a lot of time on this essay. Let's take a look at your next one about enjoyable activity with a child. Many ways to gain expertise on specific fields and to become a more creative person. In this sense, most people argue that playing or doing fun activities with children is better than reading to develop skills or abilities, particularly creativity. I strongly believe that the second one is the best option. So this essay will analyze both alternatives and use examples from academic research and personal experience to demonstrate points and prove arguments. All right, there are a few things that I want to talk about in this introduction. First of all, just I'd like you to get into the habit of actually including the prompt. Just, copy and paste it right above your answer, because it's really important for me to be able to refer to it when I correct your essays. And of course, the same is true and, even more true for task one. Just make sure that you include the image in your answer. Um, the reason one of the reasons I want to do that is because I want to show you how important it is to create an essay that really tightly, closely responds to the prompt that you have been given. And so it's important for us to actually look at the prompt. Why do I mention that here? Because you had this interesting sentence here. Okay. You said, I strongly believe the second one is the best option. So this essay will analyze both alternatives. So that doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, because I know that this is not a discuss both views and give your opinion essay. I know that it's either a to what extent do you agree or disagree, or it's which do you agree with. It's something like that. So essentially, when you have a question like that, you don't need to talk about both sides. You can, but you don't need to. Now, why do I think it's strange here? Because you've told us that you strongly believe the second option is better. Okay? And so when you strongly believe that, it doesn't really leave a lot of room for you to support the other idea. And so I'm not really clear why you've told us that you're going to talk about both. Does that make sense? If you wanted to talk about both, then you need to somehow rephrase this a little bit. Okay? So we'll have to talk about that. I want to actually read the essay um, a little more, and then we can get back to this issue. Also a little bit of grammar. This actually grammatically and lexically, it doesn't work. Now, typically what we would say here is I strongly believe that the latter, latter, is the best option, but it doesn't really, it's not the right expression to use here because of the way this structure is the way this sentence is constructed. You have a fun activity is better than reading. You're not supposed to use the latter like that, okay? I mean, you didn't use the second one, but it's still not clear. You could have just said, I strongly believe that reading is in fact the best option. That would have been fine, because reading here is actually pretty far away from, reading here. So it would have been okay to use that, and it would have made this far clearer. Okay? All right. Let's move on. Also, don't forget no contractions. So firstly, specialists consider that doing an enjoyable activity with a child does not enhance any skill at all. This is because when realizing this activity, people try to get fun or to entertain and not learn something new. To do so, people need to be focused, not concentrated. People need to follow a method or take lessons to develop better skills and to increase capabilities like improvisation. I don't understand why you're talking about improvisation here. Take, for example, recent research in OA from Harvard University indicates that in most countries of the West, readers develop several cognitive capabilities. I don't understand that. Also helps to cultivate imagination, communication, and problem-solving skills. All right, you lost me here with your example. I don't understand the grammar of this at all, and I've tried reading it several times, so I'm not clear. Okay, so I think there's a little bit of a misunderstanding of this task, and this happens actually, unfortunately, somewhat often. They're not talking about adults developing new skills and creativity, but they're actually talking about children developing these skills. And it's not entirely clear to a lot of people. But yeah, we're not concerned with adults. So this is a little off topic, okay? And I think that if you had been talking about children, you probably would have been able to develop it a little differently. Let's see. Also, don't forget that the template shows that you're supposed to have a clear introduction in like a topic sentence in your introduction in the beginning of your paragraph, and also a sentence that kind of wraps around like a rephrasing in the last sentence of the paragraph. So try to implement that. It does make the paragraph feel more cohesive. Okay, so what did you actually end up telling us here? All right, now I understand. You basically are saying why you think this doing this enjoyable activity is not helpful. Okay, so it's not like you were going to talk about it like in favor of it, but you actually talked about why you think it's not effective. Okay. Um, Again, I'm going to stick to what I said initially and tell you that I still think you should have addressed that because it was really unclear to me when I read this. I strongly believe that reading is the best option. Um, so this essay will analyze why enjoyable activities are not effective. Um, no, I wouldn't actually have written it like that. Let's see. Let's find another way to do this. I strongly believe that reading is the best option while enjoyable activities are not. Okay, and then it's fine when you do that, and it will use examples from academic research and personal experience to demonstrate points of arguments. That would have been just fine. Okay, all right, so let's move on with this. Secondly, reading allows people to gain knowledge, which is indispensable to develop most abilities. A teacher once told me that reading resembles having a conversation with brilliant people who may never meet me. This is due to the fact that reading allows the reader to contact the author and transmit him. That doesn't make sense. The reader transmits complex and revolutionary ideas to whom? To the author. So grammatically, something happened here. I don't think this is what you meant. I also think this paragraph is really underdeveloped, which is a shame because supposedly this is the side that you really support. So this absolutely needed to be longer. You needed to say more about it. For me, it's rather concerning that your conclusion is even longer than your body paragraph. That's something you definitely don't want to do. In fact, get into the habit of developing your body paragraphs and having shorter introductions and conclusions, because this is really where you're going to be scored for task achievement, okay? Not so much in your conclusion. So develop your body paragraphs more. This is definitely underdeveloped. Okay. And like I said, I had a hard time with this. There was only 3 sentences here, and the third one didn't make sense. So that's definitely a problem. All right, so to conclude in the examples and arguments given, I firmly disagree with the proposition that, careful, doing an enjoyable activity helps to evolve, no D, important abilities including imagination or creativity. It seems that it is difficult to establish that doing enjoyable activities with a child could boost creativity. So I strongly believe that reading could be a more effective activity intended to develop skills and to increase imagination abilities. Okay, um, so this is really interesting now because the essay asks you to talk about skills and creativity. You never really, well, a little bit here you talked about it, but it's readers. Yeah, this is really strange. Look, this is a sentence I didn't understand. Readers increase, develop. I didn't understand that. So I couldn't really comment on it. This is the only sentence where you really analyze creativity or imagination. So it's not enough. They actually wanted you to spend more time discussing creativity, okay? Because they say develop skills and creativity. So you're supposed to talk about skills, and on its own, you're supposed to also talk about creativity. You didn't really do that. You're supposed to cover in your body paragraphs. Okay, so you could have covered it here. So reading this now, connected to your conclusion, I'm wondering what you were trying to tell us about readers here. And I'm also wondering why you're telling us here, because This is supposed to be about the enjoyable activity. So I'm really rather confused. Okay. So how would I have wanted to see this? Okay. Well, here, what I would have done is I would have talked about um, how an enjoyable activity can potentially develop new skills. Like, let's say, for example, puzzles. Maybe puzzles can develop hand-eye coordination. Maybe drawing can develop creativity. Um, and again, hand-eye coordination, fine motor skills. Okay, and these are two activities that develop skills that cannot be created or developed by just reading alone. Okay, and so yes, there is some validity to the idea that that these activities can help develop skills. However, despite what has been said, reading is something that develops uh, skills and creativity that cannot be matched by any other activity, and certainly should not be neglected in any household. Um, Reading helps develop vocabulary, first of all, which is so important in so many aspects of life, both in school and following school. Um, it develops imagination, because when young children are reading a story or being read to, they can imagine fantastical worlds, and it really helps them kind of create the story and the image of the story in their head, and so forth and so forth and so forth. So that's kind of how I would have done it. Okay, just to give you a little idea of how you could develop this essay. All right, so we have spent a ton of time on this. um I hope that you have some of the main ideas and the main kind of key points that you need to work on here. Development, making sure that the essay is a little more cohesive, that things kind of are better joined together. Okay. And of course, also, working a little bit on your task achievement as well as some grammatical issues as well. So, what you need to do next is correct this set of essays based on the suggestions in this video. Begin an error correction list where you write down the mistakes, and then next to each mistake, what the correct version would be. That's something you'll add to with each essay you get back. And then, of course, we need another set of essays from you. So go ahead, get all that started, and we'll meet back here with that next set. Good luck to you.